So today I would love to talk to you guys about Bigfoot, or the more respectable name is Sasquatch. A lot of diehard Bigfoot researchers don't like it when you use the name Bigfoot because it's kind of, it's just the way that it sounds and it's kind of disrespectful. So a lot of people prefer using the name Sasquatch. That's something that I actually found out by watching Les Stroud, the Survivor Man. He had Bigfoot series that he did, and he talked about that in one of his episodes. But anyways, I thought that today would be interesting to talk about Sasquatch and what I think about it, if I think it's real. You know, I have always been fascinated with Sasquatch. Ever since I learned about the creature, it just captured my imagination. And I think that a big part of that is we always want to um, discover new things because it's exciting, right? Whenever we discover new creatures, it's always really exciting. And I think that for a lot of people, we just would love it if, Sasquatch was actually discovered to be a real creature. Now, I don't want anyone to feel disrespected whatsoever for me not affirming 100% belief in the creature. If some of you guys watch this and you're a diehard believer, um, I'm just not fully convinced in my mind that the creature is 100% real. I do believe that there's something there, um, and I think it's reasonable to believe that Bigfoot does exist. I don't think that we have the 100% evidence because we've not captured a body, um, or captured one alive. We don't have a body. So, at least as far as the scientific community is concerned, um, they wouldn't believe in this creature because they're going to need more evidence that this thing is actually real. They're gonna need a body eventually if we ever want to say, yeah, this thing absolutely exists. So, is it real? Is it fake? Is it just made up? I don't know. Um, for many years I've been, studying this thing, researching it. I've watched a lot of documentaries, probably most all of them. Um, I've watched many Bigfoot researchers on YouTube, like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, um, Dr. John Bindernagel. He passed away. He was a good man, and he had a lot of good things to say about Sasquatch. And you can watch a lot of his videos on YouTube. But, Dr. Jeff Meldrum certainly has a lot of knowledge as far as, Bigfoot tracks, the anatomy of Bigfoot, because that's what he does. He studies those things. He's a professor. Um, and it's quite convincing to me, at least, when you have experts like that in the field and they're saying, yeah, there's a good chance that this creature may exist. Now, a lot of scientists would say, absolutely not. This thing is not real. It's just a made up thing. And people that believe or want to believe in it just completely get ridiculed, and it's like, if you if you believe in it, be prepared to be made fun of, be ridiculed. It's sort of like believing in God. A lot of people like to ridicule believers that believe in God. And it's no different really with Bigfoot, because people will say, well, there's no evidence for it. You've never seen it, so therefore it's not real. Well, I've never seen Abraham Lincoln, but I have a pretty good reason to believe that he existed. I don't find that a very convincing argument not to believe. I don't think that I have to actually see something in order to believe that it might have been real. Um, so, for a lot of folks that are very intellectual, evidence based, for a lot of those folks, they aren't going to probably believe in this creature just for the fact that they want to look professional. Um, they don't want to be ridiculed. And a lot of that is true in a lot of other areas in life where even if there's a lot of good evidence for something and you think that that thing actually is true, a lot of people will cower down and they will side with the other position just because they don't want to get made fun of. They don't want to lose their credibility. Their interest seems to be more about what other people think of them. Um, and that's very true in a lot of areas. So um, I think one of the best, at least to me, video footages of Sasquatch is probably the Patterson Gimlin film. And that was filmed, I believe, in the late 1960s. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, they were going up through Bluff Creek. This is in California, in the Pacific Northwest. And they spotted the creature. They had one of those old cameras, and they took footage of it. And, that's become like one of the legendary films of Bigfoot, and probably the best film to date. Even though it's older, I think that a lot of experts would agree that it seems more genuine because it fits the time. Nowadays you have high definition video, but it seems that whenever anybody tries to capture footage of the creature, it's always really fuzzy, and it doesn't appear to be in good quality, and it kind of makes you wonder, we have all this great technology. We have phones that can shoot in high definition. Why can't anybody actually get a good high def video? Now I know about Todd Standing's videos, and there's a whole story about that and a whole controversy around that, which I don't really want to get into this video. I am going to make some more videos on Sasquatch because I really like the creature. I think he's fascinating to me, and I think it's a pretty cool topic to talk about. So I'll definitely do a lot more. I want to share stories. I want to share evidence. I want to share a lot of different stuff with you guys. So this should be pretty exciting. But in this video, I'm just briefly talking about the creature. Now, there is one very interesting and famous story about a guy named Albert Ostman, who was a Canadian prospector who lived in British Columbia, and his story is about how he says that he was actually captured and taken captive for 6 days by a Sasquatch. And this was in I think it was Totem Inlet, British Columbia, if I can remember. I know it was somewhere there. And I think it was in 1924, if my memory serves me right. And I'll definitely share the story with you guys in another video, but it's a really fascinating story, and I think it's probably still one of the most famous ones that we have. But anyways, long story short, the guy actually comes back, and talks about it. He actually survived. So, did it happen? I don't know. But it certainly sounds pretty convincing. Um, and pretty remarkable, actually, to think that you were taken by a Sasquatch. Wow. That's pretty crazy. We don't hear a lot of stories like that anymore. So you got that. You got the Patterson Gimlin film, and I've talked to, well, I didn't talk to, but I've listened to a lot of interviews and lectures that Bob Gimlin has done, not in person, but but on YouTube. And what strikes me is that he seems to be a very honest man. For one, he apparently professes to be Christian, so I wouldn't suspect that this guy has any desire to lie. That's not something that a Christian would do. It's not that they couldn't do it, but it's just one of the things of being a Christian is you don't desire to lie. That's not in your nature. That's not in your heart. So I find that Bob Gimlin, at least to me, seems to be more of a trustworthy, honest type of a person, and I can kind of tell that when he's talking. He really does sound like he's convinced that he actually saw the creature, and it's kind of cool that he's still, alive, and he talks. He's quite old now, and you can look him up on YouTube, and he has a lot of different talks, and he tells the story and everything that happened. Well, there was a lot of controversy over it, and a lot of people tried to say, well, it was fake, it was just a monkey suit, and then they did a whole thing with National Geographic, and they tried to get some guy dressed up in a costume to try to reenact the thing, and it was just a complete failure. And to date, they still don't think that it was a person in a suit. Even Dr. Jeff Meldrum, thinks that it's an actual real Sasquatch creature and not just something that was, made up. So that's quite interesting, and I think that is probably one of the most compelling evidences for me, at least. But you still don't absolutely know. And that's the thing. You just don't absolutely know. But if you think about a lot of this stuff logically, and you think about all the creatures, right, that we have discovered in the past, and at one time people would have thought, nah, that sounds ridiculous. There's no such thing as that, Well, over time, those things have come to be true. So, there's still a lot left to be explored in the world. It's not like, human beings have discovered every single square inch of planet Earth. Not at all. And there's so many areas where probably nobody's ever set foot. You have the oceans, which are largely undiscovered. I read something about how our oceans are less explored and discovered than space, so that we actually know more about space than we do about our own oceans. Go figure. So a lot of the money that's being spent into NASA, I wish a lot of that money would be going into ocean research and also fixing our oceans from the pollution. And that's something that would actually be a good topic to talk about too, is pollution. But yeah, I actually have a book on cryptids, because Bigfoot falls into the category of cryptid. And cryptid is the study of cryptozoology. That's basically these creatures that the scientific community has not said, yes, these are actual, living creatures. So cryptozoology is kind of like legendary, folklore type creatures, people that have claimed to see these things, but we don't actually have 100% evidence for their existence. Um, so I've seen some strange things myself, before in the woods. One time I went up into the woods on a dirt road. It was kind of like an off road from the main road, and there was like a creek that was running right down through the woods, and I was going fishing for brook trout. Well, I went in there, and even though there was like some houses around here and there, it was pretty creepy. I won't lie. Whenever you're out there by yourself in the woods, it can be kind of intimidating, especially if you're not used to doing it all the time. And yeah, it was pretty freaky. But I try not to let that get to me. I try to stay focused on what I'm doing, and I try to just enjoy the moment and try to relax. But anyways, I did see a couple fish, some nice ones. I think I seen a rainbow, really small. It wasn't like anything big or anything. But I did notice that there was a lot of rocks, and so I was like walking along the rocks and things where this creek is, and I noticed that there was a pile of rocks piled up on top of each other. Now, when I shared this with someone else, they said, well, it probably is just a human that did that. And that's actually a good explanation. It probably was. But then again, I've heard that Sasquatch are known to do things like that as like it's almost like markers. So, they might break a tree branch, they might pile rocks up on top of one another. There's different things that they do apparently, as like markers. So they're like signals to the other ones. Oh, if they do that, I don't know. I haven't really studied, gorillas or apes or anything like that. So maybe that's something that they do. And if Sasquatch is related to them somehow, maybe that's something that they do. Maybe that's part of their behavior. If they have any kind of intelligence, which I would assume that they would if they're able to avoid humans, because with all of the humans, you'd think that eventually one would show up. But if they're very good at avoiding us, and they have some type of intellect, then it's possible, that they're communicating with one another and they're doing these types of things. But we really don't know. This is just something that people think, that they've observed. Maybe it's just a natural phenomena. I don't know. But it's certainly something to think about and to, recognize. But other than that, I have never really had any other experience. I've never heard, I don't think, a Sasquatch. I've gone camping and I've heard strange knocks and things like that, but it could have just been, the wind. It could have been something falling to the ground. It could have been a bird. There's so many possible explanations for why you might hear a knock. And I think sometimes when you want to believe in Bigfoot, you go in there and you're like, every little thing that you hear, every little thing that you see, you are pretty much tempted to just attribute it all to Bigfoot. And then it can like convince you in your mind, even if you don't have 100% evidence for it. And I think that happens a lot with people. Sometimes our mind can be so powerful, and it can just convince us. We can start seeing things. We can even see and think we see patterns of things. Like I can look up into the sky at a cloud and I can like visualize and make it look like something that I want it to look like, even though that cloud might not actually look like that. So you gotta be careful, I guess, when you're hunting for Sasquatch, and you're out in the field, to recognize those types of things, and just be really observant. And I think the more that you're out there, you can kind of know, and have a better explanation of what's going on. And maybe if you do have an actual encounter, yeah, that was definitely not, a branch that just fell, or that wasn't the wind. I remember a story that Les Stroud was telling about in one of his episodes when he was in Alaska. And, he was just sitting there making a fire. And there's actually a video about this online if you guys want to check it out. But he talks about how he's just, doing his own thing. And then all of a sudden he hears this, like, this ape noise. Like, whoop, 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 and he's in the middle of Alaska. We know that there's not apes in Alaska. Like, at least nobody's ever heard of such a thing, So if he actually heard that, and you can even see in the video clip of him when he heard it, he looks, like, yeah, he heard something. So that's pretty convincing, and that's pretty spooky, and it spooked him. And then it really made him start, like, questioning things and thinking, gee, is this creature actually real? And then it wasn't shortly thereafter where he got involved and he did the Sasquatch series on his show. So I'm just thinking, like, yeah, there might be something out there, guys. I don't think it's something like just to laugh off and be like, have a closed mind. Like, yeah, no, there's no way you can do that. For me, I have an open mind, and I look at the evidence, and I go where the evidence leads. And even though I'm not a total, believer, and I can't say, yeah, he absolutely exists, because that wouldn't be intellectually honest. Nevertheless, I still think that it's reasonable to think that there might be something. And I think that the other kinds of evidence that we have for the creature would be the footprints. Okay, I think the footprints are probably one of the best evidences, other than the Patterson-Gimlin film, because think about this: if somebody finds a footprint of this creature way out in the middle of nowhere, and you want to say that it's a hoax, then you would have to believe that somebody went all the way out there in a random spot just to place these tracks. Now, what are the chances of somebody putting it in the right spot at the right time so that somebody eventually will see it? Because if somebody goes out in the middle of the woods and puts a fake track down in the ground, there's got to be enough time that somebody will come along and see it, because the track isn't going to last there forever unless it gets, like, imprinted in mud and then it, like, hardens or something like that. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, like, a fresh track. You would have to be, like, kind of like all set up, like a conspiracy. And there's so many tracks that they found that I don't think you can just attribute it to just all hoax. Now, there are definitely hoax. There's a lot of people that are hoaxing, and there's a lot of people that make videos on YouTube that hoax all this stuff just so that they can get a lot of views and get a lot of attention. And actually that's really bad for cryptozoology just in general, and especially so for Sasquatch, because when people just take this as a joke, or they make stupid videos, or they fake evidence, it makes it that much harder for the serious-minded people like Jeff Meldrum to kind of have to decipher between the fake and the real. And if you have so much of this fake stuff coming in and all these fake videos, it really just does a disservice to the whole thing, to the whole research, to the whole looking for the creature, right? And it also makes it even more less serious for people that are looking on, because they see all this stuff and they're like, that's a joke, So there's definitely got to be more serious-minded people, serious researchers, and people need to just, I don't know, they gotta. It's just not a good moral thing to do, right? It's not a good moral thing to try to trick someone or, to fake something. That's not being a cool person, And a lot of people do. A lot of people do that. So, anyways, back to what I was trying to say about the footprints is that there's only so many possible explanations. So, the footprint is either a hoax, somebody actually did it, or the footprint is actually from a real creature, a real Sasquatch. And the fact of the matter is that you can't just say, well, these footprints are all hoax, because there's certain cases where it couldn't have been a hoax. And one thing we do know for sure is that whatever is out there is leaving footprints. So whether it's an actual person that's doing it or whether it's a creature, it's kind of up in the air, guys. So that's why you can't just completely rule out and say, yeah, this thing doesn't exist. And not only that, but it's just the fact that we have historical evidence in that we have people saying that they've seen it throughout history. We have footprints, encounters. And that's the other thing I probably should briefly touch on, is the fact that how many people have claimed to see this thing? There's so many people that have said they've had encounters. And what's interesting is that some of these people are very serious-minded people. There's people that have PhDs or policemen, just a whole gamut of different kinds of people with different kinds of professions, and they're not just all into Bigfoot. And a lot of these people never believed in Bigfoot. They were against Bigfoot, and then they see it. What's up with that? You gotta consider that too. So you kind of have to rule out the fact that, well, it couldn't have just been people that just wanted to believe it, or whatever. No. And that's why every person's story is different. Every encounter is different. Every, situation is different. Some people's lives are changed because of it. And there's also the explanation of, well, maybe if it's not an actual creature, like a flesh and blood living creature, maybe it's some spiritual thing. Maybe it's some demonic thing. Maybe people that are into the occult. But then if it was the fact of it being in the occult, what about people that aren't in the occult and then they have an encounter and say they see it? How would you explain that then? Well, that kind of rules out that it's an occult thing. And I haven't looked at every single story or encounter myself, but nevertheless, it could actually be a spiritual, maybe a demonic thing. I don't know. A lot of people that are into Bigfoot say that it is something like that, or that it goes in and out of dimensions. I don't know. Maybe maybe it materializes and then dematerializes, and that's why the thing kind of just like vanishes and disappears. Like, I remember hearing about this one lady who said she's seen it, and she says that a thing just disappeared right in front of her, like it completely dematerialized. Now, you know, I believe that there are demons. I'm a Christian. I believe in angels and things like that. So is Bigfoot just something that the devil uses to deceive people? I don't know. It's possible, I guess. I mean, it could, the same reason, kind of how it explains the UFO phenomena. You know, and some people say they see Sasquatch um, with the UFOs. So, is there something there? Is it a demonic thing? Like, what's going on there? And you have all these different, theories and possible explanations and everything. So I kind of just like pull back and just kind of let time, rule out a lot of these different things. I'll keep an open mind, and it would be cool if it was a real, a new creature that we haven't discovered yet, like another ape. Now, one last thing before I go, and I'll definitely make some more videos, guys, about this, but I think also something that should be said is that if Bigfoot is Gigantopithecus, which we know Gigantopithecus because we have I guess a part of a fossil of one. We know that at one time existed. If Bigfoot is related to or is a Gigantopithecus, then yes, Bigfoot actually is a real creature. But the thing of it is we don't know if Sasquatch is a Gigantopithecus. So we can't just say, Sasquatch is a Gigantopithecus, because we don't know. But it's possible that Gigantopithecus actually never completely died out and is still living. Or maybe it's in the same family. Maybe it's the same kind of species or whatever. And that's actually a possibility, I'm actually a young earth creationist. I don't believe in the molecule to man idea of evolution. I think that there's varieties within kinds. And I think that a lot of creatures that they say have died out and are extinct have actually been found alive. So is Bigfoot just another case where it could have been a Gigantopithecus? I mean, that's fascinating, and if that's true, well, there you go, and I think it's worth noting that other countries, other continents have a great ape, except for North America. So does North America have a great ape that we just haven't discovered yet, and would that be Bigfoot? It's possible, and maybe we will discover this. Maybe